Welcome to Classroom Quest K-12, where the art of teaching embarks on an epic gaming adventure. I'm your host, Stephanie Seagroves, bringing over a decade of teaching experience to this educational quest. This podcast is a rallying point for educators, combining the thrill of gaming with transformative teaching strategies. Here we use the Mastery Gamification Methodology to overcome student apathy and engage students in their own hero journey. So grab a cup of coffee and get ready, because you and I are about to launch our quest. Hey Teacher Guides, how you doing? Glad you could join me. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about rewards and motivation in our classrooms. So I've always struggled with this myself, and I think a lot of other teachers have too. There's a lot of different methods, there's a lot of different strategies, and there's a bunch of ways that we get kids to do things that are good for themselves. And honestly, this is a thing that I definitely appreciate people's opinions on, because I know mine is not the only one, and there's merits to a lot of different systems. But let's dive in. Let's see what's going on here. Let's see. So when we're thinking about rewards in the classroom, a lot of times I think about like the candy box that the teacher has, or like the gold stars that go on the paper. And it just seems so like cheap or trivial at this point. But see, when I was a kid though, those stars on the paper, they meant something, right? They marked the work that I had done. They marked that I had done a good job. So, for our modern students, I'm wondering how we can adapt that to be a little bit more relevant to how they are today. I mean, imagine for a moment that you're a K-12 student who's not really been taught to value grades and schoolwork. Since your family doesn't want truancy issues, I have a few kids like that. They just come to school so they don't get a visit from the truancy officer. Then the kid ends up finding themselves in a 7-hour prison every day from 8 to 3, floating from class to class, messing around with their friends, trying not to get in trouble. Under those circumstances, what would be required for that kid to learn something? Or like even a less extreme situation. Imagine that, you're an average school kid. You get C's for grades. Your parents expect you to graduate high school, and you're really enjoying your welding class at the local tech center, and you're pretty sure you're not interested in college after graduation. So in that situation, what's motivating that kid to learn? What are the best student engagement strategies for these different types of students? So when I was a kid, many teachers. Now, not all, thank goodness we're getting some different kinds of teachers, but a lot of us teachers were good students, right? If you hated school, it wasn't super likely that you were going to become a teacher and just chain yourself to the institution that you hated for 18 years of your life, right? So I, like many other teachers, was a pretty good student. My motivation was to get a good grade, right? And for most teachers, our motivation was to get a good grade, right? And, but then when I became a teacher, I noticed not every kid cares about getting a good grade, right? A lot of kids, they're just there, right? They don't want truancy issues. They don't want to get in trouble with their parents, or they don't want to get grounded for bad grades, but getting a good grade, not really high on the list of motivational things. So what kind of motivation do we use for students like that? Students that are different from the typical mindset of a teacher. We should get good grades in order to get good grades. Doesn't always work for every kid. I mean, students, like adults, need motivation to do stuff. Like, for me personally, I am not a huge fan of housework. I do not have much motivation to do housework just for the sake of housework. Yet I do it because I'm motivated to have a clean house for my family. I especially hate doing the dishes. It's just gross, and there's food on them, and I'm just not a fan, right? But then I know that my kids need clean dishes to eat on, and I know that I don't want to see the pile of nasty, dirty dishes in my sink. So I do it even though I dislike it and I'd rather be doing something else. I'm not motivated to do housework for the sake of doing housework. I'm motivated to do housework for other reasons. In my case, the outcome. But I think that we often expect students to be motivated to do schoolwork just for the sake of schoolwork, or just for the sake of a good grade. And that's really not realistic for most students. I mean, just like I need outside motivation to do housework, most students need outside motivation to do schoolwork. So what are the best student engagement strategies for the different kinds of students? I mean, traditionally, motivators that educators have used have been like long-term goals for the future. So we have kids having goals of going to college because college is very important, and they have to get good grades in high school to get good grades in college, and they have to get good grades in middle school to get good grades in high school, and they have to have good grades in elementary to get good grades in middle school. And so it's just a cycle of, do your best, get a good grade so that you can go to a good college so you can get a good job. And that's what works for me. I mean, and it still works for a lot of kids, and that's great. A lot of teachers, if you don't complete work, they'll call home to parents, or missing recess. Ooh, did anyone have to miss recess when you were a kid? You didn't finish your work, so you had to miss recess? Yeesh, yeah. These outdated practices are really not the best student engagement strategies anymore. While it is important to teach students goal setting for long-term success, a lot of our students developmentally are just not motivated by that long-term success. It's hard for students to look past tomorrow, much less after they graduate. And so what do we do until they're developmentally ready to be motivated by these long-term goals for their lives? So many students don't think their grades matter after high school because they'll go into the military, or they'll go into the workforce, or a trade school, which are all great options. I love that there's different options for kids because one path is not right for everyone. But if they don't need their grades after high school, why would getting good grades be a motivator to do well in high school? I mean, at that point, as long as you pass, you're good. And as much as I would love for my Spanish students to learn Spanish just for the sake of having a complete Spanish conversation, understanding a Spanish speaker, and being understood by a Spanish speaker, that goal takes a very long time. Studies say 7 years, man. And so in the meantime, they need some other short-term motivator to help them get through the homework of conjugating verbs all the time. And it's the same with every other subject. So most students will need some sort of short-term motivation so that they can eventually get to that long-term goal of graduating with honors, or holding a full Spanish conversation, or being able to use their math and drawing skills to become an architect, or until they get to that point where they realize that's their motivation, they need a short-term motivation. So let's talk about rewards and feedback. So in my Mastery Gamification Methodology, the best student engagement strategies are both long-term and short-term, right? So we give rewards, short-term rewards for student work. And honestly, it's really interesting what students will consider a reward. In athletics, students will spend hours and hours and hours practicing their skills. And then they spend a whole weekend at their tournament to bring back a gold spray-painted piece of plastic with the number 1 on it. And I mean, really, when we look at that reward, it's not about the value of that gold sprayed piece of plastic. It's worth like, what, $5? It's the piece of plastic. The piece of plastic is a representation of the hard work and victory, the fact that they were better than they used to be. They were better than other people. And it's a validation of their hard work. So that's what I use in my classroom for rewards. It's acknowledgement of a student's hard work. So hopefully this makes it a little bit easier for teachers to think about rewards in the classroom. We don't have to spend a lot of money on them. It might seem kind of silly to us, honestly, and maybe we wonder if it'll motivate kids, but as long as the reward reflects the student's hard work and victory, it will mean something and it will be valuable to our students and therefore motivate them to work. So in my classroom, I award badges to students to recognize their hard work and the victory that they've achieved. In my classroom, students have to do more than just pass to get their badge, all right? I got higher standards than that, and they've got to reach them, and they do. They have to earn the minimum mastery level on a test, or we like to say boss battle, in my classroom, and that's a 75% or a C in order to earn their badge. So the logic behind that is it's more than just passing, right? So, I passed the test, I got a D-, okay, whatever, right? That's not worth a badge. That's not a thing. That's not hard enough work. But to get a C, for some kids in a foreign language class, is huge. It's amazing. Foreign language is hard, man. Especially when you're like from kindergarten. You've learned English, science, and math, social studies, and all of a sudden you're in 7th grade and your body's changing and all your hormones are running and they land you in Spanish. You don't know how to learn a foreign language. You don't know any of it. That's hard, you know? So I set it at 75% for my mastery, minimum mastery level, right? And that's when they get their badge, when they pass their test at the minimum mastery level. So the 75% is enough to be an extra challenge beyond just passing. But then it's also hopefully achievable for every student in my classroom eventually. And I mean, honestly, as a teacher, I am personally very happy when my students achieve a 75%. It's just hard. So pulling a 75% and what people would consider average grades, I'm a happy teacher, right? That's all good with me. Now, in addition, I need this minimum mastery level to be enough of a challenge that's a higher standard than just passing, but also that it's achievable for all students with enough time, effort, and support. Remember, here at the Mastery Gamification, we believe that any student with enough time, effort, and support can learn anything. Now, of course, my students who are capable and want to get good grades, I certainly encourage them to go for higher grades than the minimum mastery level. But 75% is like the low bar, all right? Where in other classrooms, it's 60%. In my mastery classroom, it's 75%. That's the lowest they can get to get their badge and move on. Now, this is great. Once students receive their 75% and their badge, the student almost always, you can see it immediately. They feel very proud. And a lot of times I get a little like, woohoo, or let's go. This achievement means something and they're proud when they accomplish it. It's an acknowledgement of their hard work, perseverance, and victory. They deserve a little let's go, right? And it's so much fun to see them celebrate that. Now, if you're wondering about badges and like, well, Seagroves, this sounds great, but what do I do? How do I get them? So keep in mind, we said the actual value of the badge is what it represents, all right? So you don't have to go spend money, right? You don't have to go get trophies made of, platinum, right? So literally, the badges I award to students are very simple. It's a design that I just put together in Canva, and it's just a small square piece of paper, and I write the student's name on the back. And students have this paper, 8.5 by 11 standard printer paper display case that they put in the clear front pocket of their folder. And there's little spaces in there for them to tape their little square badges so they can display how many badges they've earned during the semester. And giving this badge or reward is a great form of positive feedback. It acknowledges the student's work and it gets them going. It keeps them going. And the student has accomplished something. They deserve some recognition. But it's also important in a Mastery Gamified classroom to give constructive feedback also. So for my classroom, this will routinely happen if a student attempts the boss battle or test 3 times and does not achieve the 75% after 3 times. At that point, if they haven't achieved the 75%, it's pretty obvious they're missing something important and they're in need of an intervention. So remember, we believe that with enough time, effort, and support. Any student can learn anything. So if they've tried it 3 times and they still don't have it, they're missing one of those. They're missing time, effort, or support. So for me, the intervention is a one-on-one. It's a simple matter of just going over their tests, right? We take a look at their 3 tests they did. I see what kinds of questions they got wrong. They have time to ask me questions. I have time to explain stuff. And this constructive criticism is essential in my classroom because there are many students who will never ask me for help, no matter how in the dark they are. You know them. You got them too. So the built-in intervention to go over a difficult test with a student becomes invaluable. All right, so now it is time to see what's going on in a Mastery Gamified classroom. So, oh my goodness, my friend, we did our first boss battle in Spanish 2. So, you know that I've had Spanish 1 Mastery Gamified for a while now, and now I'm working on Spanish 2. And I tell you what, it's fun to be a beginner again. Yep, because great thing about students is they are wonderful fact checkers and typo finders. So honestly, like next year students are going to be good to go because all the typos and errors will be gone. Oh my goodness, so many typos, so many errors. But as long as I'm fixing them as students come and tell me about it, it'll be good for next year. But it just reminds me that it's very important to be flexible when you're changing how you're doing and what you're doing. And the benefits, I will be reaping them next year. So here's hoping that gets a little bit easier. But your Master Teacher Quest challenge for this week. I challenge you to go out and find some way that you can make a reward, a short-term reward, part of your classroom, whether it's a badge, whether you buy some shiny gold stickers, whatever it is that you feel like your students would enjoy. And then make sure you put a value to it. So tell them ahead of time how they get it, what they have to do, and don't make it just super default easy. Don't make it just passing, all right? But something a little bit higher than that. So they got to put in a little bit of work and make it mean something because they have to earn it. All right. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you later. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Classroom Quest K-12, and I hope it inspires you to level up the learning in your classroom. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and leave me a rating and review wherever you listen. It really helps me out. And if you want to schedule a meeting with me to see how we can customize the Mastery Gamification Methodology to your grade and curriculum, find me at my Facebook, Instagram, or my website at seagrowstrategies.com. I'd love to help you level up your classroom and help you turn your students into classroom heroes. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.